Thank you. May I now invite Suri to come up and he can introduce the other moderators. He is an entrepreneur and he's also the co-founder of Choora Labs.
This is working? Good evening, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed the film. I invite my fellow panelists to come on board. Harini, Rohan, Anand, please come. Yeah. So it's a really special occasion for Anand. He missed out on the actual screening of the film, the first screening in the islands, in Agatti. So this is the first time he's seeing his own film through the eyes of the audiences in the hands and clap. So one more big round of applause for him, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I think what I missed in Agatti, I got here. Thank you all for coming, taking your time out of the weekend and coming here. I have to say this first. Yeah.
You have a lot more to say, Anand. We'll make sure. So, it's a pleasure to introduce my fellow panelists. Rohan, you've been introduced to. Rohan heads the Oceans and Coast program and is one of the founder trustees of the Nature Conservation Foundation, and has been working, as you would have gathered, in the islands for 25 years now. And by all, I think, established records, the longest marine biology work in the islands, yeah? Consistent outsider from there.
Mostly through inertia, basically.
So that's a good form of inertia. Harini, many of you might know, she is an author and an ecologist, and she's a professor at Azim Premji University and heads the Climate and Urban and Sustainability Center there. And Anand's our young enterprising filmmaker. This is many firsts for him. I, as Sandhya said, I'm an adjunct faculty also at NCF. I was a once upon a time entrepreneur. Fancy myself as an interloper in conservation now. So we'll get this started without further ado. And as many of you would have, I'd be curious to know, is I'll start this discussion off with getting Anand to tell us a little bit about the filmmaking process, particularly Anand, and this I've asked you this question before. The film has a very interesting way of immersing you in the lives on the boat, right? Mm-hmm. As a filmmaker, what was it to actually get that kind of a feel? You were not, and almost making yourself invisible in the process.
Yeah, that is one thing as a filmmaker I have intended to do always, make myself invisible. And I think I've tried my best here, and I think it has come out that way. One of the most important attention which I gave to this film is that I wanted it to happen in a way that all the sequence, when he's narrating about the stories in the boat, whatever fishing is happening, I wanted all that sequence and all that interview parts to be shot in the boat itself, so that if you notice when he's speaking about fishing or catching the fish, you can see that the boat is always it's on the waves. So you also initially I was confused if it will bring some motion sickness to people, but yeah, I think the first screening proved itself the other way. But I'm really happy that I made that choice. It was an experimental choice. We actually headed out a little out to the boat and got in Nasirika, who is always willing to do whatever we want. So I think that has got in that element of bringing into the film. Another thing which I really focus on is, of course, this comes from my previous filming experience, the Tabal Karan short film. It's about a postman which I did before. So it's about getting into that emotion of the person who is actually narrating the story. Rather than putting out facts and statements or theory, I think it's about getting into the emotion side of people when they say the story. And I think a little bit of that has come out through the way it starts also, right? Like, I didn't want it to start with the typical drone shot of showing the lush, the corals and all those things. I wanted it to start raw, on which I think the team also very much aligned, Rohan, and he was also very open to that kind of starting where it was just just like that he starts, വെളുപ്പിനെ 4 മണിക്ക് ഞങ്ങൾ ബോട്ടിൻ്റെ അടുത്ത് വരും. Morning 4 o'clock we just reach the boat and we start off. So then I think that creates a curiosity is what I feel. You have to tell me.
I mean, one really interesting thing is Nasarika himself. I think he's...
Actually, tell us
Exactly.
about Nasarika.
Yeah, if you can tell us a little bit about Nasarika and working with him.
So Nasarika is, I think from my experience of filming interviews, I think he is the most easiest person to do an interview with. He's just natural. He's organic and he's himself. He doesn't think that there's a camera put up on his face, and it doesn't matter to him. And he just talks out whatever he has in his mind, and it comes from his heart. I think from the initial vocal interview, we had a vocal interview before we did the film, like the final interview. There itself, we had an idea what he was going to speak about. We had some questions. Of course, Kevin and Somesh helped me with the questions, and they were the backbones. I think I'm flooded with a lot of thoughts in my head because this is the first panel discussion I'm doing. So they were my backbones all through the filmmaking process. And from the first interview itself, I got an idea that it's going to be much easier to work with him, and all the more it got much more easier as I built a rapport with him. And on the boat, again, one day spending that entire. So I did the interview after the filming of the fishing process. I think that made the process much more easier because we got to build a rapport with him, and that also made the process easier. And he was seamless, as you can see in the film.
So you're switching from filmmaking to the cause behind the film, right? Rohan, after 25 years of diving and counting fish of various kinds, and why the film? Why now?
I think I mentioned a little bit about this in the introduction. I mean, so I spoke a little bit about this during the introduction, but essentially it was this, that look, after 25 years of looking at the reefs of the Lakshadweep, you realize that actually, yes, the reefs are probably going to be, really, get worse with time. They're not getting better. But that's not as important to me as what's happening to the people of the Lakshadweep themselves. This is really what's happening as a result of climate change is a problem of, it's an existential problem, a problem of habitability. And it raises really interesting questions, or very serious questions about how long these islands continue to be a place where humans can survive on there. And the question that we asked ourselves as a team is, given this challenge, or this existential challenge of survivability on these islands, how best do you talk to people about this idea of vulnerability? And rather than talk about vulnerability, what we wanted to talk about is ideas of resilience. What does climate resilience look like in places like Lakshadweep? And once you start looking at it through that lens, then you realize that actually the way people have been engaging with nature in these islands is inherently resilient. And to some extent, that's what we're trying to capture. We're trying to capture some of these really celebratory stories of the way people engage with nature. I mean, Nasarika, it comes out so naturally for him. In fact, I'd give you a small example. When we had the release in Agatti itself, and we called Nasarika for the release, he said, no, actually, I have more important things to do. I have to go and fish, right? And that was much, much more important to him. So in fact, after the screening, we went to his house and we had a bit of black cotton chai with him, etc. And that was much, much more important to him. And I think those kinds of ways of life reflect to me exactly the kinds of resilience that you require to live in these kinds of environments.
Yeah, that's so critical. I mean, the element of resilience that comes across, and also the fact that they're so embedded in these systems, right? I kind of pushed the discussion to Harini and said, films, these are, the modes of sort of communication that we are beginning to engage with as researchers, as scientists working in this area. But you've yourself been trying to grapple with this, of using various media in a sort of world in planetary crisis at a time of climate change. What role do these films are likely to play? How should we mobilize them in terms of addressing this larger challenge of climate change and planetary transformation?
Yeah, I think this is perfect for the audience also to chime in eventually when we get to the Q&As, because one of the things we have been seeing, I mean, I speak to it myself as a scientist, I think Rohan will agree, but that when we started, I think all of us started with this idea that we are scientists, we will do science and we will communicate it to some mythical policy maker, actor, community member, and here you take my science and go do things. I've told you what to do. And I think that's an arrogance that I at least have realized over time does not work. It's the idea that unless you co-produce the questions, co-produce the knowledge, co-produce the discussions with communities, with people who are getting affected by climate change, you don't see an output. But also, I think just scientific writing is not something that people read. Even popular writing reaches much fewer people than a film. A film can touch hearts and emotions, and I think that's really where we're stuck with the climate crisis. We're not touching emotions, imaginations, feelings. And only when we do that, we can get through to people. And I think this audience is, for me, a really good example of that. So I think that, and to me, this is also, again, when we say science, we think because scientists have the wisdom, but what did he say, Nasirika? That really stuck in my mind, even the first time when Rohan showed me a rough cut of the film, that what is it? No.
He knows.
It's Kalam Mari, Manisharu Mari, Meenum Mari, Kadal Mari.
Exactly. So time changed, the sea changed, the fish changed,
changed and the
people, and people have changed.
And it came from himself. I didn't have to do it, I didn't have to write a script and give it to him. And I think 100% of it came from himself. Even the chai part, it's not. I mean, I know it was staged, but the thing is that it actually happened there, where he was telling, "Ha, sibe or chai naka." So it happened there. But the thing is, when I saw that, I couldn't film it. But then I thought I could recreate this because that is what happened there. I didn't have to stage. I did have to stage it, but. Since it happened there, it was seamless, I think. And I think it came somewhere in the middle point of the film. It was kind of like an interval. And yeah.
But I guess my point is just that wisdom that is existing in the place, of the place, by the people who are doing it. And the film is the best way to capture that and show that to people, where we can be as transparently out of the frame as possible.
Yes.
No, bunch of interesting things emerge when you talk about place and film, but can you push towards the film? Anand, what did you have in mind? What would be the end result of this movie? When you finished making the film, what were your thoughts about what kind of an impression will it make? And you've come into an audience now, seeing it for the first time, your live reaction.
Yeah.
What were your expectations of the film? I mean, like Harini's alluded to, the power of film to evoke emotions, talk and create conversations around the issues of climate change and stuff like that. But as a filmmaker, what were those emotions they invested into the film?
That's a very nice question, actually. The thing is, initially, I just had one confidence that, out of my experience, I had one confidence that I'll end up with a good film. But I don't know. I am assuming it's really good now, since because from the limited crew and from the limited equipment and with the serendipity of Lakshadweep, I think it has given us a good film. The thing is, initially I hadn't seen Lakshadweep, and Kevin and Somesh were the people who are giving me a picture of Lakshadweep. They created a drawing in my mind with whatever the videos they had shot, with the pictures they have shot in the phone. And through internet, you can learn something from Lakshadweep. But one thing what you can't learn about Lakshadweep through internet is the people there and their compassion and the love and the warmth. That you have to experience there when you go there in person. So the first time I landed there, I'm landing in this beautiful lagoon. In between the lagoon, the airport is in between the lagoon, and there's a narrow strip. And then you lose your mind. And then it's like, oh my God, where am I going to start? Because everything is a frame, everything is beauty there. I think that actually helped me come up with this good film, the location as such, and I'm thankful for that. Another part is, I didn't know what I'm going to end up with, because I knew the process. What was going to happen from the vocal interview. We got to know that how the fishing is happening and all those processes in theory. But in practicality, how the things are happening on the boat, I didn't have any idea. I didn't go for a recce. That was another thing. Usually, all these films, maybe you can do a recce or you can see the spot where it's happening. But for us, it was like Nasarika will come up one fine day, he'll call us and he'll say, tomorrow we are going. So we have to be prepared for that. So you don't know if it's going to happen tomorrow. I'll be waiting. I'll be filming B-rolls across the island so that I can use it somewhere in the film, right? So that is one thing which really helped, like roaming around the islands and getting B-rolls where the mother is tying the hair of the child, and I mean the daughter. And all those stuff I got in the roaming time where we were waiting for the Nasir's call. And one fine day he called and said, okay, yeah, let's go tomorrow, early morning, 3 o'clock. Okay, fine. Then I packed my equipment. I took all my equipment. I have to figure out where to charge. There's no charging port, so I have to keep all my batteries and everything ready. So there is a lot of uncertainty, and you don't know what is going to happen. And I also don't know how the action is going to happen, where they are going to stand in the boat. Because the first time I'm seeing this boat is at 3 o'clock in the morning, where they are filling up the diesel and they are cranking it on the pump and all. So you see the sequence here. That's the sequence of events where I saw what is happening during the fishing process. So one thing I had in mind is I have to capture as much as possible from the land, under the water, and through the drone. Like as many angles you get, the best, you can come up with a story. That's what. And even after the filming, I just had in mind that we'll sort this out somewhere in the editing table. If there is something missing, I'll tell Rohan and I'll ask him, please, can I go in? Could you afford to send me again? But thankfully, I think we had enough and more footage. And Rohan here, my close friend and editor, who saved with this editing part. And he has done a brilliant job in bringing up all the pieces together here. I cut down the narrative. So you basically, how you do is you put out the vocal interviews, you chop into pieces, and you like put it together like how you want the story to flow.
Anand, hang on. You have to save the sweetest bits for some questions. And
Sorry.
So we'll reserve some of your mysteries of filmmaking for that.
Yeah.
The one thing that's really strikes me. By the way, Kevin and Somesh, whom he's referring to and we've referred to, are not mythical creatures. They actually exist. They are live human beings, and we shall introduce you to them later on. So, so the one thing, Rohan and Harini, and then Anand in that process, and then we'll open up. This is the last question, I promise. So one thing the film really succeeds in doing is through a way of life. These ways of life are sort of anchored to a place which is very specifically Lakshadweep, like he said. There's a certain placeness to the whole thing, right? It can't be anywhere else, right? It's the fish, it's the people, it's the culture, it's the language. There's an idea of place which is increasingly getting lost, right? And the loss of place means a loss of ecology, and at one level a loss of culture as well, right? There's a twin set of losses when you lose a place, right? So, and in many ways, this ways of life is also an effort, I suspect, and we've spoken about it before, and I'd like you to speak a little bit, and Harini to speak about it a little bit, that what would economies or the world, the motion, the way we make our modes of production, to use a very technical term, what would they look like if they drew their inspiration from these ways of life, which are entangled, embedded in place, right? Isn't it some way, that's where I would like to sort of draw relevance to that and a place like Bangalore. So the question is, how does this film have any relevance to Bangalore and this particular audience? This little peek into these lives shows us that there's a certain organic relationship between human beings, the non-human, and the economic activities. So quick comment from you and Harini, and then we'll open it up.
So Suri, we've spoken about this very often. One thing that's phenomenal about a place like Lakshadweep is that it is such a bounded system. It's a system where you know where the edges are to a large extent. You know that the island, where the island ends. It's mostly a 5 square kilometer island, and you can walk across from one end to the other within a day. Most places are just not more than 700 meters from one shore to the next. And that's where the island ends. But then you look a little beyond, and not very far out into the horizon, you see the reef all around. And that's another bound. And then you have the open ocean, and that's another bound. And those bounds are very, very clear. And what we've been seeing over the last 25 years is that these bounds represent very clear ecological bounds, but very clear bounds for human existence as well. And whatever the resilience of the system lies in living within those bounds somehow. And I suspect that, I mean, and Harini can probably speak a little bit more to this, that living in cities, we often don't see those bounds. So Lakshadweep becomes a really nice mesocosm in that respect. But the city is just another version, I think, of Lakshadweep. It's just a much larger, more complex version. But I think that there are these parallels that we can make between a place like Lakshadweep, which is simple, bounded, and a place like Bangalore, which I think also has its bounds, which are a little bit more complex.
Pretends to not recognize them.
Pretend not to. I mean, I'm just thinking of what you said, Rohan, and what would be the opposite of an island? I think to me the opposite of an island would be a city, if there's such a thing. And the closest example, the closest Indian residence I can think of is Bakasura. I mean, the city really grows and engulfs everything in its reach, gets the water, gets the resources, gets the food, throws the waste out. And this is the problem with Bangalore, for instance, which is very clear to that many old Bangaloreans know that up till 1892, Bangalore grew because each successive ruler, each successive community, successive village came and created a lake, created a rainwater harvesting structure, created wells around that, really nurtured the ecology to make places for them. It's when in 1892 Bangalore started getting piped water from outside the city, and within 2-3 years you could see that the relevance of lakes had gone. So you're right, place making, living within the limits of the place. If you don't, that's the relevance I can see to the film. If you don't know, if let's say instead of tuna you can import fish from outside, you can import tuna cans, then Lakshadweep's not going to live in its limits. That's the problem with Bangalore. And you're right that it's still an island because we think we can mythically import water, but we are right now realizing that we can't.
One last comment from me and then we'll open up. What it reminds me of what a famous urban geographer once said, when you subtract ecology and culture from a place, what remains is Cartesian space. And that's what cities are. Right? We think of them as space measured as commodities, as square foot and price, right? And what you get a glimpse of is things with their lives embedded in geography, ecology and culture. So this is a little bit, our ways of life effort is also an effort to try and, recover that idea of place. And there's a certain displacement from place which makes it space. Can be reversed that to a small extent. Now I'd like to really open up our panel. You can questions, comments. One request I'd like to make is please make it, not long-winding comments. We have a large audience. Yeah, we can have time for that after that. If you can make your questions short and direct it to one of the panel, that would be lovely. Yeah. This gentleman here. Is there a mic going around? Yeah. Yes. Please, can you say your name? And
my name is Shyam. Thank you. It was a beautiful film. 2 questions. One to you is that was there a conscious attempt that you avoided the land life of the families and of the fishermen? You didn't get that. It was completely on the boat. So is there a reason why you didn't do that and bring out the culture there? And number 2 to you, what exactly is affecting things there while the number of fishes are going down and all that? What's the reason that's affecting Lakshadweep's biodiversity?
Anand, you can.
So regarding the land, So regarding the land portion, I think we consciously decided not to venture into their personal lives or with the family. I think it was mainly focused on the fishing part, the technique of fishing and everything around the fishing and the sale of the fish. That is the main reason we avoided anything apart from that, whatever is happening in the land. So it starts from morning and then we are going to fishing and then we are selling it. So we wanted it to be crisp and short.
Rohan, maybe you could speak to that a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're very conscious to do in the entire series as we develop more of them is to really follow a day in the life of a person as they engage with nature within the Lakshadweep. And I think that is part of what we were hoping to do as well, and to capture really that entire process. You asked a question about what exactly is affecting the biodiversity of the Lakshadweep itself. So the Lakshadweep are among the most climate vulnerable parts of the world, anywhere in the world. These are low-lying areas, not more than 1 or 2 meters above sea level, and they're made completely of coral reefs. The islands themselves are created out of the coral. And as we know, corals are extremely vulnerable to climate change as a result of changes in sea surface temperature, as well as in sea level rise. Now, sea level rise is probably not going to be as much of an issue as we initially thought, but with increases in sea surface temperature, for instance, this year is a super El Nino year, where you have sea surface temperatures rising by about 2 or 3 degrees above average, and that is enough to kill off a large proportion of the coral. Over the last 25 years or so, we've seen coral decline by about 30% in these islands, and what that means is that atolls around the world, like Lakshadweep, are really, there's a real question being asked about whether they can actually survive over the next 30 or 40 years. And so that's the primary concern. And along with the coral reefs, of course, goes the fish, as well. Along with that goes the habitability of the land, freshwater resources, and a whole range else.
We have a question from the lady here.
Hi. You've beautifully captured the livelihood of, just a regular person, and Harini alluded to this. But these are the stories that will help us sort of, talk about climate crisis in an interesting way. I'm just curious to know how, it's so beautifully done and it's planned so well. How did the idea of doing this come about? And, how did you all get together to do this? If any of us want to do more of such projects, how do we go about it?
And I'll say a little bit about it, but I'll leave Rohan to. See, yeah, the conception of the idea was really, and the gentleman here also alluded to it. We didn't want to, one part was to really capture these entanglements, right? These labor and material entanglements that people have with nature, right? In lives such as ours, I think we are so far removed, right? You're sort of getting onto the board, putting on, pumping the diesels. All of these are very material entanglements. So one thing was to use Lakshadweep as a theatre where these kind of entanglements still exist. And they constitute the pulse of everyday life. They constitute the heart of the economy, right? Ways of life living. So we envision these as a series of films where the focus is on these human, non-human entanglements. Right?
The other thing I'd say is that right now, in places like Lakshadweep and pretty much everywhere else, there are these competing ideas of modernity coming in.
Yeah.
And what, in terms of aspiration, in terms of what constitutes, an aspirational way to be. And to some extent, we wanted to counter that narrative to say that this too is modernity. This too can be, an adventurous, a spectacular way to live your life, which is not just stuck in time. It is constantly evolving, as Nasarika himself talks about. He talks about all the changes that have taken place.
But Nasarika also refers to the bounds. So one clear thing for us was, one way of demonstrating the bounds is through these kinds of activities. That's when you begin to know bounds. Harini.
No, just her last question, how does someone like them engage?
Well, I suppose that in every environment that we're familiar with, I think we find these ways of life. And I think it becomes up to us to try to find ways to document them. I mean, and I think that, having a fantastic filmmaker like Anand Ram would...
Please call me.
You can definitely do that. Another question, any other questions in the audience? Oh, there's one right at the back. Can the mic go to the lady in the back?
I'm Shushila Nair. I spoke to a couple of islanders in Agatti and other places a few weeks back. And I understand that tourism development is going to affect the livelihood of the fisher folk in Agatti. Without much notice, just 3 days notice, they were asked to remove all their boats and everything. And they said the Praveg, a tented accommodation company, which had put up tents in Varanasi and other places, are going to put up some tents. So they were asked to remove all their equipments and shed and other things. So they said their livelihood is at stake. Any comment on that?
There's a lot of changes taking place in the Lakshadweep right now. And I think that how the Lakshadweep weathers this is going to be something that I think people from the Lakshadweep are going to have to come up with answers themselves. And I think that there's going to be a lot of changes taking place over the next few years. What our attempt here is to say that among this entire suite of changes that are taking place, this is something that you can potentially hold on to as well. okay, as we face the future. The future is coming, whether we like it or not. Tourism is coming to the Lakshadweep. It is going to be part of the vast range of solutions for development of the Lakshadweep. What we are hoping is that among all these choices as well, tourism, things like fishing continue to be an important part of the economy of the Lakshadweep, as it has been for the last 50 or 60 years.
Aaron had a question here.
Hey, thank you. Enjoyed the film very much as well. And I like the fact that you all brought up, both Rohan and Harini brought up the point of strengthening local enterprise. And not just strengthening, but also kind of seeing it for what it is. And not just being idyllic, but also the need to strengthen because it is important, okay, as one of the things. Now you brought up a couple of times that modernity is going to affect certain things. There's the globalization effect, there's the regional effect, and the skipjack tuna itself is like a metaphor for globalization being one of the largest ranging fish. It actually spans the entire region. All the way through the Western Indian Ocean, you'll catch skipjack tuna that go to Lakshadweep, are also caught off the Gulf of Oman. They go further south towards South Africa, the mascarenes, etc. How do we kind of accept and embrace the global and the regional while continuing to sort of see and strengthen the local? Because there's no way we're going to be avoiding it. And you said the answers will come from the islanders itself. What's your thoughts on that?
That's a complex question, Aaron. But this is when we're talking about modernity and we're talking about being embedded in place. Okay, the thing about the Lakshadweep is that it is embedded certainly in place, but it is engaging in the larger Indian Ocean world. It always has. It has always been part of the larger Indian Ocean world historically as well. And the fishing for tuna is very, very much part of that. So when it's catching the tuna in the Lakshadweep, it is participating in the pollen line fishery that has actually evolved multiple times in, all the way from Japan to the Basque country and all of that. So there are these conversations happening about fishing techniques as well. So it's not completely endemic to the Lakshadweep. It is practiced in many other locations. But what is incredible about it is that it is inherently sustainable in many respects, as long as they get their bait fishing right and all the rest of it. So we think that we're not trying to fetishize something that is completely endemic, okay? But what we're trying to say is that the way fishing is done in places like Lakshadweep can be inherently sustainable and they can be inherently off place.
Any other questions from the audience?
Shashi, and I've been to Agatti as a tourist some 20 years ago. Agatti and Bangalore Islands for diving. And I found that they cannot sustain if everything came from the mainland. There was no food, no animals, 2.5 goats. And they had pretty much nothing but fishing to do for survival. There's no land to grow anything, so they need tourism to survive.
So is that a question or a comment?
What's your take?
I'll take it as a comment. That's an important comment. Yeah. Fair enough. We have a question. Oh, the lady here. Sorry. I'll get back to you. She had raised her hand last time. Sorry.
I was just curious to know if there are new forms of exchange kind of coming up, because time seems to be really ripe for more localized exchange systems along with carbon credits. And are there any firms or NGOs working there with the local people now that this new trust has come on tourism to say, hey, that this could be a great platform for carbon credits with tourists coming in, cooperatives and new kind of local currencies to empower the people who are actually residing there? Like, have you all heard of any, or is the government thinking of any?
No,
I actually won't be able to speak to that. I wouldn't really know.
I mean, we are not the right people, but we haven't heard of anything of that kind.
All right, okay, thanks.
Gentleman here had raised his hand. I'll come to you.
Friends, I must congratulate the filmmaker. And for you, to surprise you, I am the islander. I am from Lakshadweep.
So lovely.
Yes.
Lovely. Which island are you from, sir?
I am from Androt.
Androt.
And this film has is the briefest possible commentary on our sea life. And that he could have actually thought of going far beyond whatever that he has been able to depict in this shortest possible film. Because ours is a life in the middle of the sea. For centuries, we have been trapped in the oceanic life. And you know, whatever you saw in the film, the fishing, it's a mixture of the most recent adaptation. Because you know, Lakshadweep are in two sections. One is of Minikoi, which has its own distinct cultural sort of thing. Whereas the Lakshadweep itself has got another type of. The fishing that you showed, it's a mixture.
From Minikoi.
Half borrowed from Minikoi, half local, like that. Still it is a very primitive. It's such an enormous resources at our command in the ocean, in the Arabian Sea, which is open to exploitation by all other world fishing countries.
That's really the question, right, sir? I mean, now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm telling you. So we are far behind there. Yeah. Anyway, that's not your objective in making this film. It's more of a briefest possible depiction of our sort of a fishing life.
Thank you.
And I congratulate you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Gentleman here. A gentleman here had a question. Right here. Right to the back.
Thanks, everyone. This is a film question for the filmmaker. Amir, thanks for making the film. You know, when you were speaking about going into the island and capturing the stories and meeting with Nasir and him, being a natural, I also wanted to ask the question of working with a team that's been there for 25 years, because that kind of familiarity and that length of work obviously opens up connections, emotional connections, etc. And as a filmmaker, maybe because somebody else asked the question about what we can do in places, you know, what does that look like as somebody who's unfamiliar and then joins a team that's been there for a long time? Both like contradictions, but also synergies in putting out something.
I think definitely going there as a member of NCF has really helped me. I think otherwise I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity of maybe meeting Nasrika. So Nasrika was recommended by again Kevin and Somesh and the team. So because they have that rapport built in and they have been working there in the field for like 25 years again. I think they know the environment, they know the people, they know the surroundings, and they were the best people to choose who would be apt for as a protagonist for this film. So that has definitely helped me here. If I had gone on my own, I don't think I would have ended with a story like this. So for that, like I said, because of all these backbones and pillars, this film has come out this way.
So, we'll just introduce the mythical two guys here. Where is Somesh, Kevin?
Please.
There have been so many mentions that I'll be remiss.
They always like to stand behind and not come in.
Somesh, we give you Somesh. So there was one question. Badush is right here. Badush is also an invisible shoulder on which he'll either fairly substantial shoulders.
Yes.
So, there was a question in the back somewhere, or yeah, there are two there. Okay, can we just get them in turn, one after the other?
Hi Anand, I'm Garima, and thank you for making a gorgeous film. It's beautiful to just see before you even start making sense of it, so thank you for that. My question is if you have any interesting behind-the-scenes stories, interesting things that happen that reflect on the themes that we're talking about here, or anything that happened that you would like to share that wasn't on the camera.
Are you talking about a funny moment or something? Yeah, Kevin throwing up, and that's one place where he was least active in the sea. He was seasick through almost 70% of the trip. He was seasick, I guess. Thankfully, I wasn't. But yeah, I don't know if this is the right audience to say this, but I had to take a shit on the boat. That was, and considering mine and Kevin's relationship, it dates back to 15 years, I think, 10-15 years. He has taken a shot of that also. I wouldn't show that, but he has taken the liberty to take a photograph of that. But that was a really funny moment when he showed me the picture. Sorry, it's not pollution, by the way.
So we had I think we shall reserve that end of the conversation for after the. So we had another question, hand raised at the back, right? Out there.
Hi. Resilience is a buzzword that we hear a lot in the dev sector now. So I'm just curious, leveraging the platform or the conversations that are coming from this film, how is there a plan in terms of how you elevate community resilience practices more into broader systems, because that doesn't happen very often?
Rohan, you want to go ahead?
So I think this is, it's interesting, and I think that the very first screening that we had in Agatti, what was incredible about it was just showing the film itself generated such a lot of conversation. Immediately, as soon as we showed the film to people in Agatti, there was a very vibrant conversation that happened. And one of the criticisms of the film was that you are romanticizing this. Okay, you're showing just the best parts of it. Yes, it's a beautiful life. It's wonderful. It's exciting, etc. But fishing is also problematic. It has a lot of challenges. You need to talk about those challenges, and that started a whole conversation about the fishing itself, and about the activity of fishing, about the future of fishing. And I think that's where it begins. And that's why I think films are so powerful. And that's why watching films together in an audience, I think, is also very, very powerful. And that power to generate conversations is something that I don't think any other medium has.
In fact, one of the key reasons for doing these films is to actually generate those conversations. And I think, in the years past, things have become, BIC is a lovely place. It's a lovely forum where conversations around books, films, and products of culture and art can take place. But in the good old days, we had film clubs. They were essentially meant to do that, right? Film as means to sort of generate social conversations, which again alludes to what Harini was saying about these being ways in which we can talk about the climate. And is there an...
Hi sir, myself Supreet. And this movie comes at a very crucial time where India is promoting tourism in Lakshadweep over Maldives. So if it's about sustainability, do you think it can sustain where tourism is promoted? And if it's about sustainability, of course, is it just 40 to 50 years or centuries to come? What do you have to say about it, sir?
So, look, the way that I look at it is that it doesn't really matter how much longer Lakshadweep has. It's about the quality of life in the time that Lakshadweep has. And I think that's true for whether it's Lakshadweep or Bangalore or for the rest of the world, right? And when it comes to tourism in the Lakshadweep, as I've said before, tourism is going to be an important part of Lakshadweep's future. And the way that you engage with tourism, I think, is dependent completely on the people of the Lakshadweep itself. We just hope that in that mix, we have enough of the endemic, of the locally embedded, included in that mix altogether. So that's as much as we can say, I think. Yeah.
Just one thing I'd like to add to that. Often these conversations become very simplistic about some kind of a juggernaut rolling over and sweeping things aside, right? I think we should go beyond those binaries, is our view in many of these. And the reason for having these kind of places, these are little like seeds of things that you throw. Hopefully these will bloom into trees which can be island sites of difference. And I think that's the effort, right? And we sort of crystal ball gaze at our own peril. This whole idea of, this is not to belittle the fact that there are certain disastrous things happening. But, when Rohan looks at his coral, there are interesting sources of resilience. Things do things which we don't expect them to do. So I think some of these efforts to sort of restore these ways of living, planet restorative ways as opposed to planet extractive ways, are an attempt to kind of push the balance. Any other questions in the audience? Oh, there's one there. Yeah.
Hi, myself Arjun. First of all, congrats to the entire team for making this film happen and screening it here in Bangalore, so all of us have an opportunity to see it. My question is to Anand. Could you please talk about the life lessons you got from the project? I myself also a filmmaker, and I have had the opportunity to work with Anand for a lot of projects. And I know every project is a life lesson also. Like, that's the best part of documentary filmmaking. So, the question is to Anand. Could you please talk about the life lessons you got from the project? And also, do you have any advice to the people who want to film in sea, in board, like the preparation for filming? Do you have an advice for them?
Advice? Oh my God. I've reached to a point where I've started giving advice. So. Cool. Thanks for the question, Arjun. So life lessons, we both have learned life lessons from Tabal Karan. So he's another filmmaker, fellow filmmaker. We have worked together. But with respect to Choora, I think it's about, for me personally, on that day trip when I went for fishing. So it's excruciating sun, and it's also on the sea. There is seasickness to a bit. In spite of all these, there are people who are striving towards building their daily livelihood from this effort, which is like experiencing that for one day was, it's by the end of the day I was dead, I was done and over. So through the middle of the day itself, I was exhausted, considering the sun. But they were really pushing it. It didn't seem like it was an effort for them, but it didn't show up on their faces, it didn't show up on their actions. They were enjoying it. So one thing which I learned from this particular documentary and the filming of it was that there are people who are doing a much more difficult job than what we all are doing, and how privileged I am, how privileged we are. And in spite of that, they don't complain. They live their lives and they are happy about it. That's the one thing. So that's a very important lesson which I got to learn. No matter whatever is happening in your life, try to be happy and stay happy as much as possible. And don't whine about it. Thanks for the question.
Do you have any further questions? Otherwise, we'll close.
I wanted to just say one thing, I think, which we forgot, which we were talking about when this morning when we were talking about what we wanted to share here. And so, since so many people asked about films, I think one of the things that I'm talking about, things that Rohan and Suri were saying, was that the idea is not to do a documentary, but is to provide seeds of hope. And I think that's really what we're looking for at the time of climate change, at the time of the crisis. Communities and community work is one seed of hope. Human nature interactions where you take without extracting, where you take respecting the limits of what nature can give you is another seed of hope. So how can we do these? I think films like these, if more people come up with films like these in varieties of contexts which can give us seeds of hope for the future, I think that would be brilliant.
Fantastic. On that optimistic note, I'll request Somesh to come here and...
Hi all. It's been a long Sunday evening. Hopefully an engaging one for all of you. And I would just like to quickly wrap it up with a formal vote of thanks and allow you all to be on your way. So Choora has been a culmination of quite a bit of time and effort on the part of many people. But to be honest, none of it would have been possible without, of course, Nasirika and all the entire crew of Kautar. So I would like to mention Shukur, Razak, Mukbil, Ulumuddin and Haris. They were the people you saw on the boat who were with us, and they are the people of Lakshadweep who made this film possible. In addition, on behalf of NCF, I would like to thank all the warm and generous people of Lakshadweep. Basically, everyone in the island community who over the last 25 years has hosted us, supported us, and collaborated with us in so many unconditional ways. And we owe it to them, basically, all the work that we do. And we are glad we could share some part of it today with you. We have already screened Choora on the islands, as they already mentioned. This happened last month in Agatti. Unfortunately, Anand, Kevin, and I couldn't be there for it due to some administrative hiccups. We were therefore quite eager to experience what a public screening of Choora would be like, how it would be received. And today we were able to get that experience and much more. So thank you all for coming in such large numbers. Thank you for taking the time out. Not only did you turn up, you also engaged so enthusiastically, asked so many wonderful questions, and hopefully we did justice to your time. Special thanks to our generous funders, MCRC, APU, and Cholamandalam, without which Choora, we wouldn't have the money for it, mostly. So, and lastly, on behalf of all of us at NCF, we would like to thank Sandhya and the entire team at BIC for being such amazing collaborators and for making this event so smooth. For those who would like to watch Choora again or would like to share it with your friends, we have uploaded the movie on YouTube, and you can watch it by scanning the QR code which is there on the postcard that you might have received with the booklets. The booklets are complimentary, so I hope all of you got a copy. They contain snippets from our work in the Lakshadweep and life on the islands itself. And they are bilingual, so they are in Malayalam and English, so hopefully you can all read it, and it serves as a useful memento from this evening. So yes, thank you so much once again to each and every one of you. We look forward to hosting you again for the next film in the Ways of Life series soon. Goodbye and take care. Thank you.
Hello. Hi. I would like to call upon the editor. He is somewhere in the audience. Rohan, could you please come up? He's done a wonderful job. And so, Rohan has been doing editing for me for the past 1.5 years. He does wonderful job seamlessly. I just wanted to bring him on the stage. Thank you, Rohan.